Recently, the U.S. military has been doing what it can to allow witches and warlocks to practice Wicca as an officially sanctioned religion.
It's called a Wiccan pentacle. Starting this week, veterans of that faith will have the option of having this controversial symbol associated with witchcraft placed on their headstones.
Anybody here ever seen Apocalypse Now? Okay, those little boats in there on that show was MSRs. They were mine-sweeping, river-going. And what our job was on those little boats was to do rice patrols. The many women and children would be on these boats, very few men would be on them, and they would go get rice, and a lot of times they would run that rice up the rivers and supply the VC. So our job was to search these little junks or these little boats to look for rice, you know, more than what was normally needed for a family. And so we would do that. We'd stop the little boats, we'd get over on the little junk and look around, search the whole thing, see what was on there. And if there was a little rice, it was fine, but there was quite a bit of rice, then we would take the rice and take it over and show it to a liaison, a Vietnamese liaison officer that we had on there. This man had been lived in New York City for a period of about 5 years, spoke better English than I did. And we would take the contents of whatever it was we found and take it to this man and show it to him. If he thought it was too much rice or too much supplies or whatever for a family, he would question. If he did not like the answers to the questions that he got, we would take the women and children, put them on the boat, and take them back to our little compound. He would further interrogate them from that place, and then if he still did not like the answers to his questions, he would take women and children in the back of the compound and he would shoot them. Well, thank God I didn't have to actually partake, you know, take part in that aspect of things. But as you can imagine, as a young man, and I don't think I'd even turned 20 yet, this really began to bother me. So up until that time, I had never done any drugs. I don't think there was any drugs on the streets of Oklahoma when I'd left. So all we had ever done was drink and carouse. Like I said, we weren't Christians at that time. I wasn't. So, as you can imagine, here I am, a 19-year-old kid from Oklahoma, hardly ever been out of Oklahoma. This really bothered me because it got to the place where every time I took one of those kids and lifted them off their boat and set them down on our MSR, I was pretty sure they might not come back. And most of them just women and kids, and actually most of them were innocent.
As the garrison chaplain, I have the responsibility to ensure that every soldier on Fort Jackson can exercise their constitutional right for free exercise of religion.
Right now we're in South Carolina, which is the known as the Bible Buckle. January 10th, we stood up and had 17 soldiers walk through the door. Now we have between 90 and 130. Now it's going to be a black moon on Friday. We're going to capture that energy and work some magic.
We all have a little bit of magic in us.
Magic is the transcension of my soul.
I worship the old Greek gods, Zeus, Hera, Poseidon.
Dreamscapes and worlds of my own.
The natural flow of life itself.
Several things going on this time of year. It's the equinox, it's also the witch's Thanksgiving, it's also the second harvest.
Spirit, air, fire, water, and earth.
Do pagans worship the devil? No, we don't. All right, and I need a crone and a sage.
I think it's amazing how the military will accommodate for this because it's not the norm in regular society.
There is a hungering in the hearts of a lot of young people as they're looking to find meaning in life, and particularly for a soldier who's asked to lay down their life for values and for a nation. Religion plays a key point in helping answer those deep down identity questions of who we are.
I'm grateful for my spirit guides and the paths they walk with me.
I'm grateful for the presence of magic all around us.
I'm grateful for a chance to change who I am.
I've not yet practiced any magic. Rachel said we would be practicing magic next week, so I think that's going to be really exciting.
But I did begin to find out a little bit about the program that we were involved in. I did find out from those guys that the liaison officer that was on our boat was getting a reward, a bounty for ears. When he was killing those kids and innocent women and children, he would get a bounty of approximately $80 for a set of ears. 80 American dollars for a set of ears. Well, you could imagine. That is when I first got my first clue there was something wrong with our government. At first I thought, you know, Washington can't possibly know what's going on here. These guys are, you know, just a bunch of cowboys out here doing this on their own. If Washington knew what was going on, they'd put a stop to that. But I eventually realized, you know, this was the program. I eventually found out, not then, but later, as I got back home years later, I found out we were a part of something called Operation Phoenix. And as I read up on it later, years later, I found out that we had killed somewhere between 40 and 60,000 children, women, innocent people, and our CIA had paid, like I said, approximately $80 for a set of ears. Well, of course, I didn't know all that at that time. But I'd ask around, I'd ask how we got in this mess. Why were we here? Like I said, nobody could give me a straight answer except one young man. This young man was a very intelligent young man. Me and him started doing drugs together and running around a little bit. Extremely intelligent young man. And actually he had made a lot of money before coming to Vietnam, investing in what he called the military-industrial complex. And I'd ask him, you know, he talked to me about investing and how to make money in what he called Council on Foreign-Related Military-Industrial Complex. Of course, being a young man from Oklahoma, I didn't understand the vast network it took to build the armaments of warfare. I never heard the term military-industrial complex. Certainly never heard the term Council on Foreign Relations. And I said, well, who is this Council on Foreign Relations and what do they do? How do they run the military-industrial complex? And he said, well, they're a branch of the Illuminati. And I said, the Illuma what? The Illuminati. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, it's a bunch of occultists. I said, cultists. And I said, you know, remind me never to smoke any more of your dope. You know, you're crazier than I am, you know. I just didn't want to believe, you know, and we don't want to believe some of these things. You know, you have to have a love for the truth to believe the truth. You know that? My mind balked at the idea of believing that maybe all of my friends and all the innocent blood spilt by all my friends, and they had died at the hands, you know, and the altar of corporate greed by a bunch of occultists. So I found that hard to believe. Occultists. I said, well, what do you mean the Illuminati and occultists? What's their deal? He said they're a group of international socialists bound and determined to create in this world and impose upon us all a one world government, a one world financial system, and a one world religion.